Diep and James were blessed with two adorable twin daughters, Anine and Min Thursday. At first, it seemed like happiness would simply mean laughter and cozy mornings, but life after childbirth brought unexpected challenges. They had to learn how to be parents through sleepless nights, moments of panic when their babies got sick, and times when exhaustion nearly broke them. One stormy night, when Anine suddenly developed a high fever, they rushed to the hospital in fear, their hearts pounding. But in that chaos, they discovered the true power of love, the force that held them together and carried them through every storm. 3 years later, their home is now filled with laughter. The innocent eyes of their daughters, the simple breakfasts they share, and quiet afternoons in the park have all become symbols of a family that has weathered it all. If you love heartwarming stories about love, family, and resilience, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to follow more beautiful journeys like this one. The sky outside the hospital was a pale gray. There was no sunshine, no breeze, just a strange stillness that seemed to stretch endlessly. Inside the delivery room, the beeping of the heart monitor pulsed steadily, like the beat of an anxious drum. James stood at Diep's side, clutching her hand tightly, her small fingers now drenched in sweat, gripping his as if holding on to the last ounce of strength she had. Her eyes were full of determination, but behind that were exhaustion and worry, a mixture of all the emotions a mother could possibly feel in the moment of bringing new life into the world. "Hang in there, love, just a little more," James whispered, gently brushing the damp strands of hair from her forehead, his voice thick with emotion. Diep didn't speak. She simply nodded, breath coming in shallow, trembling waves. Around them, the doctors and nurses worked quickly and calmly. The tension in the room was so thick it felt tangible. And then, suddenly, a sharp, piercing cry broke through the heavy air. It was clear and strong, a newborn's voice declaring life. James held his breath. A tiny, red-faced baby girl was lifted gently by the nurse. But before he could even react, another cry followed, softer, a little weaker, but just as heart-wrenchingly real. The second twin had arrived. Twins. Both safe and healthy, the doctor announced with a smile. And James felt as if he had awakened inside a dream too beautiful to believe. Wrapped in soft blankets, the two baby girls were placed into Diep's arms. Her body trembled slightly as she felt their delicate skin against hers. James leaned closer, his hand brushing one baby's cheek with the gentlest of touches. It felt fragile, like touching the petal of a flower just beginning to bloom. "We have 2 of them," he whispered, wonder and gratitude filling his voice. Diep looked at him and smiled, tired but radiant. In that moment, there was no need for more words. Between them existed something sacred, more powerful than any promise, love, transformed into life. A nurse leaned in gently to ask for the babies' names to complete the birth records. James and Diep glanced at each other. They had talked endlessly about names, jotted down long lists, debated, laughed, crossed out, and circled options again and again. But now that the moment had arrived, all those names somehow faded away. Diep whispered, "This little one, her eyes look just like yours, let's call her Aneen." James nodded, then looked at the other baby, who was already dozing peacefully in her mother's arms. "And this one has your smile, let's name her Min Thursday." Aneen and Min Thursday, gentle names, like blessings whispered for a new life. And means peace. Thursday speaks of calmness and grace. More than anything, they were the first pieces in the story of a family stepping into a brand new chapter. As night fell, the delivery room grew quiet again. James sat by the bed, still holding Diep's hand, his gaze fixed on the two little angels sleeping soundly in their cribs. Something within him had shifted, not fear or panic, as he had imagined, but a deep, settling calm, as if a door in his heart had quietly opened. He leaned down, kissed Diep gently on the forehead, and whispered, "Thank you for giving me something so miraculous." Life after the birth of Aneen and Min Thursday was filled with cries, laughter, and countless sighs during sleepless nights. James and Diep embarked on the journey of parenthood with all the clumsiness and wonder of first-timers, but also with a deep and tender love. Every day was a new lesson, from changing diapers, preparing bottles, burping the babies, to soothing both when they cried in the middle of the night. One evening, the sky darkened and the wind began to whistle through the small cracks of their home. Diep had just laid Min Thursday down in the crib when she noticed that Aneen felt unusually warm. She pressed her hand to the baby's forehead, her fingers trembling. A sudden fever surged through her daughter like a wave crashing into a mother's heart. James, who had been rinsing bottles in the kitchen, heard Diep call out and rushed upstairs. Seeing Aneen flushed, breathing heavily, and looking dazed, he didn't hesitate. "Pack a bag. I'll drive us to the hospital right now." It was nearly midnight when rain began pouring in heavy sheets. James cradled Aneen in his arms, holding an umbrella in one hand and guiding Diep with the other. Though only one baby was sick, they couldn't bear to leave the other alone at home, not on a night like this. Together, they hurried into the car, their minds racing with questions and fear. On the way to the hospital, James gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The car sped through the rain-drenched streets, headlights slicing through the misty darkness. In the back seat, Diep held both babies close, trying to stay calm even as her eyes filled with tears. She softly sang a lullaby, not knowing whether it was to soothe the children or herself. At the hospital, doctors quickly examined Aneen and ordered tests. 1 hour passed, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, a doctor came out with a gentle smile. "It's just a viral fever, nothing serious. You brought her in at the right time. You've been taking good care of her. Keep monitoring her, and she'll be fine." Diep couldn't hold back anymore. She broke down, not out of fear, but from the release of the overwhelming worry that had consumed her. James sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. He placed a hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently, his voice deep and quiet. "I've never been this scared before, just afraid of losing you and the girls. But now I know, as long as we're together, we can make it through anything." Diep looked up at him, the man who had stayed up countless nights, clumsily learning to change diapers, panicking over hiccups, and carefully guarding each moment so she could get a bit more sleep. In her eyes, James wasn't just her husband anymore. He had become the kind of father every child deserves. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but their hearts no longer felt cold. After receiving medication and instructions from the doctor, the family left the hospital as dawn approached. James drove in silence, carefully navigating through the quiet streets. In the back seat, Diep cradled the two babies, leaning her head against the window, watching the raindrops roll down like the tears she had shed the night before. And in that quiet moment, she felt an overwhelming gratitude for the storm that had passed, and for the realization that a true home isn't always peaceful. But if someone stays with you through every storm, then that is happiness. It was an early summer morning, and sunlight slanted through the green canopy of trees outside their home, casting golden streaks across the tiled steps. Inside the small house filled with laughter and tiny footsteps, Diep was busy preparing breakfast while James sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building blocks with their twin daughters, Neen and Min Thursday, now 3 years old. Both girls had inherited the best features of their parents. Neen mirrored James, especially in her focused eyes and the serious little posture she adopted whenever doing something with intent. Min Thursday, on the other hand, was bubbly and quick-witted like Diep, always chattering away with stories that made the whole family laugh, even when they didn't quite make sense. Each day, the two little angels brightened their home in their own magical way. James was building a wooden tower, then pretended a dinosaur came to knock it down. Min Thursday shrieked with delight and grabbed a toy dinosaur to help destroy it. Neen frowned slightly. "Daddy, I was building that." James laughed and scooped both girls into his arms, pretending to collapse dramatically so they could climb on his stomach, giggling as if riding a dragon. From the kitchen, Diep watched them, her hands stirring a pot of porridge while her eyes brimmed with affection. Sometimes she still paused, as if unable to believe these peaceful days were real. She remembered the sleepless nights filled with wails, the times she cried silently from exhaustion, unable to tell day from night. And yet, somehow, they had made it through, not because they were perfect, but because they had each other. That morning's breakfast was simple: fried eggs, minced pork porridge, toast, and some chopped fruit. James lifted each girl into her chair, fastened their bibs, and fed Neen spoon by spoon while Diep tended to Min Thursday. They all sat together, eating, laughing, telling morning stories. Nothing luxurious, just a shared meal full of joy. And somehow, that was enough. After breakfast, they laid out a picnic mat in the backyard. James brewed 2 cups of coffee, one for himself and one for Diep, with milk, no sugar, just the way she liked it. The girls sat coloring, each with their own sketchbook and box of crayons. Diep leaned her head on James's shoulder and whispered, "I never thought I could feel this happy." James gently squeezed her hand, his gaze soft as he looked at their daughters, heads tilted in concentration as they colored a house with a purple roof and a pink sky. He replied quietly, "Maybe happiness isn't something grand, maybe it's just waking up each morning, seeing you beside me, seeing our kids healthy, and hearing laughter in our home." That afternoon, the whole family went to the nearby park. And Neen rode her tricycle while Min Thursday chased after her, yelling, "I want to ride too." James ended up pushing both of them at once, sweating but smiling all the while. Diep quietly took photos of the moment, ordinary snapshots, perhaps, but ones that would become the most precious memories of their children's early years, and of their youth as parents. As the sun began to set, bathing the path home in a soft golden glow, the family slowly made their way back. James carried a drowsy Neen in a baby carrier, while Diep held Min Thursday's hand. They walked together in the gentle hum of cicadas and the faint scent of late summer blossoms. No one said a word, but in each heart, the same thought echoed, "We have a home. A real one." The story of James and Diep is more than just a journey of building a family. It is a gentle symphony of love, sacrifice, and trust. When their twin daughters were born, joy arrived hand in hand with challenges. Yet it was in their most exhausting moments that the love between them shone the brightest. The image of a small family rushing through a stormy night to get their child to the hospital, or the peaceful morning shared over a simple breakfast, reminds us that true happiness doesn't lie in grand gestures, but in the quiet, ordinary moments, so long as we have each other. This story leaves a warm, lasting impression, gently reminding us to cherish our loved ones and appreciate every fleeting moment. Because in the end, those moments, no matter how simple, are the most precious gifts life gives us.